He was born on March 23, 1977, and grew up during the drug era of the 80s in Nassau, Bahamas. He gives his response to the popular question, should we legalize marijuana in the Bahamas? On today's episode of Bahamian Heritage Series, one of Angliston's finest, Deno Valentino Wright. Can I have your full name and date of birth, please?
Full government name would be Deno Valentino Wright. Date of birth would be March 23rd, 1977.
And what were your parents' names?
My parents' name were Patrick Anthony Wright and Mavis Patrice Fox Road.
Okay. Where were you born?
I was born in Nassau.
And do you remember who your grandparents on your mother's side was?
Yes, my grandfather, who I knew personally, his name was Joseph Fox, and my grandmother, who I never get a chance to know, her name was Alice Gibson Fox.
Okay, where was your grandfather from?
My grandfather was from Long Island.
Okay, that's a Fox from Long Island. And your grandmother?
It would have been Acklands or
Crooked Island. Landrill Point.
It would have been Acklands or Crooked Islands, Landrill Point.
Yes, okay. She happened to be my father's sister. I met her as a child. Unfortunately, she died when I was still very young, so I don't remember much about her. What about your father's parents?
I never had the opportunity of meeting my grandfather, but I did know my grandmother, Linda Wright.
Okay, that was your father's mother.
That was my father's mother.
Do you know where she was from?
I never had the luxury of finding out.
Okay. Where was your father born?
My father's born in Nassau.
And your mother?
My mother was born in Nassau.
They were both Nassauians, okay.
Yes.
All right. Did they have sisters and brothers? They had siblings?
Yes, my mother had 3 siblings, 2 brothers, Kendall and Philip, and 1 sister, Irene. My father had a brother, which was Leonard Wright.
Where in Nassau did you grow up?
I grew up through Lundy Street, just off of Palm Beach Street, my apologies. Just as you come off of Palm Beach Street off of Wolf Road, it'll be the first corner. It's a dead end corner, and my neighbor string happened to be buried down through that dead end corner at the end.
Mm-hmm. Did you have? Well, when you were born, that was where your family lived, off of Palm Beach Street.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have siblings?
Yes, I have siblings, but during the time to Palm Beach Street, I had one brother, my older brother, whose name is Shama, most affectionately known as Muffy.
Okay.
Shama Sweeting Fox.
Wow, I never knew his name was Shama.
Yes, his name is Shama. Everybody knows Muffy all of his life, but he's actually Shama. That's his first name. Shama D'Angelo Sweeting Fox, I might say.
Okay. And you had another brother after that?
Yes. Later on, when my mother moved down further in Angliston to Miami Street, she had Joel. Then maybe a few years after Joel, she had another brother of mine named Shetty.
Okay, so there were 4 boys.
4 boys all together.
No sisters?
No sisters. Yeah,
Okay.
we have a small clan of men.
Okay. So you didn't stay off of Palm Beach Street all your life. You lived in other areas. Which
Yes.
areas did you live?
We always circulated in Angliston. My roots will always be in Angliston. I'd find myself either living through Feast Alley, which is I don't even think that the Nassau knows that name of that corner anymore. Then it would be to Miami Street, then pretty much Palm Beach Street. So my history has always been in Angliston.
Okay. Where did you go to school?
I went to school at William Gordon Primary. I have to point out that William Gordon Primary and Columbus Primary were once 2 separate different schools. When I attended on the right, which is William Gordon, and Columbus was immediately on the left. But now, in this 28th century, if you were to actually drive past, you'd only see Columbus Primary exist today.
Okay. So there were 2 schools in that yard?
There were 2 schools, 2 primary schools inside that one government yard. two different uniforms, under two different completely principals. And I going to primary school, even me back in the day, thought it was a bit weird. So you would have the little children them talking about whose school is better between William Gordon and Columbus. But both schools existed in the same yard, practically in the same building at the same time.
Okay, so the two schools were in the same building, or they had two buildings?
It was pretty much, if you would have ever looked at it, you would see William Gordon and Columbus is interconnected by one long building in the middle, and that's where the school ended. One half would have been William Gordon, the other half was Columbus Primary. So there was no, you could walk on this yard and walk into this yard, or you could walk on this side. No, it was all, they interacted as one. And break time and lunchtime, you would have two different set of uniforms out on the field playing and interacting.
Okay.
Two different schools.
Okay, so they eventually just made it all one school. Is that it?
Maybe like in around 1990. Yeah, because when I graduated in the 80s, but maybe 87, it was definitely two different primary schools.
Okay, so after you finished William Gordon, what's the name of it?
Yes.
Does William Gordon exist anymore?
William Gordon no longer exists.
Okay.
Stricken off the record books like it never existed.
Okay, so where did you go after that?
I went to Iron Bailey, but I only did 2 years there.
Okay. And what happened after the 2 years?
I had the luxury of being transferred to Abaco, where I had to attend Abaco Central High.
Okay. So did you finish high school in Abaco?
No, I had the luxury of being transferred back to Nassau. And this time I went to my neighboring school, which was C.H. Reeves, and I finished school at C.H. Reeves.
Okay.
I got to point out again that C.H. Reeves, when I finished it, was a senior high. And now today I found out that it's no longer a senior high school. You can't graduate from there. It only goes as far as grade 9 now.
Okay, so that's junior high.
It's a junior high now.
So in your day, did they have up to grade 12?
C.H. Reeves, Iron Bailey went as far as grade 12. Both schools. In fact, every school in Nassau went as far as grade 12. But with me having my kids go to school now, I get to find out that a lot of the high schools are now junior or secondary only.
Okay.
It's no, there's from grade 7 to 12 anymore.
Okay. So, do you remember how old you were when you finished high school?
17. I finished high school in 1994. I graduated school, and I was basically 17 years of age.
Okay. So then what? What happened after that?
After I finished school, I did what most young Bahamian boys did. I went and I started working. I pursued a career. I pursued a trade, per se, and it led me into a lot of different things. I started to get into probably electronics, because at the time computers was big coming out into the world. They were getting big. So I started from Windows 3.1. I remember the first computer I had was an Amiga. It was an Amiga computer, and it ran on the 5.5 floppy disk. But I can remember me being so excited that I'd see these programs run on it that I was just fascinated by computers. So whatever books and whatever old computers I get my hands on, I'd pretty much take them home, hook them up, see if I could get them to work in. That's how I got started in the electronic field.
Let me just take a step back. I wanted to go in a little bit into your high school days. Can you remember much about the era back then? Like, what was your activities like? Do you remember some of the friends you had? The street you lived through, what did it look like? Was it different from it is today in those areas?
Dramatically, yes. Nassau in the 80s and in the 90s was definitely different. The atmosphere was different for, I guess you could say, young teenage boys. Girls too, but mostly teenage boys. I grew up under the time of Nassau when drugs and gangs was pretty much the main thing. I can remember me, because I grew up through Palm Beach Street when the first gang in Nassau happened. syndicates, I think it was. I remember people was like, "Oh, but you was a syndicate because you grew up through Palm Beach Street." So I can remember getting incorporated into a gang just because of where I grew up, and that was the first gang. I grew up in an era too where there was drugs involved. So as a young boy who you see had the potential to run around and do errands for people, you would find that you would make a lot of money. Um, so the atmosphere was very different, very, very much different than it is now.
So you think those things still go on or no? Drugs and gangs?
They still go on.
How is it different? Is it?
It still exists now, but it exists on a level where back in the days, gangs were like you were considered a part of a family. Yeah, all of you would be young guys. Them who you see it basically be out there, but it wouldn't be with troublemaking. It would be where you all basically feel be together to keep the other guys from other neighborhoods from coming in and pretty much running your neighborhood. So it wasn't so much as a negativity black on black. I hate you, you hate me type of vibe, or because I come from here and you come from there. But it was more like a because you come from down the road there, we ain't gonna let you come down here and do what you want to do and have your own way if that's the type of mentality you have. Drugs, well, drugs is drugs straight across the board. The drugs back in the days were a lot more detrimental because people would sell their soul for it. I don't know about the drugs today. It's been so long since I've been pretty much tied into the streets, into the drugs in the streets, but I can tell you definitely back in the days, cocaine was new to the world too. You know, cocaine wasn't something what you see people know about because, you know, that crack was something brand new. So, you know, anytime something's brand new, people could exploit it. So I pretty much came up in a time when you see cocaine was pretty much exploiting people. So it was a different time and a different era altogether.
Did you get involved yourself with any of the? Was there any criminal activity with the gangs that you were involved with?
I mean, you know, gang is gang. I mean, straight across the board, you would like to say that no, but reality is just that you have to fight and you got to defend yourself. So yes, there was a certain level of criminal activities because if I have to take around a knife to protect myself, that means I intend to use it. Now, by the law, you know, if you have to use a knife to protect yourself, you're breaking the law. You know, but for us on the streets, it was a matter of protecting ourselves. It was even about breaking the law. You know, you had the guys who were more hardcore, they'd carry a gun. Then you had some of us who would necessarily think about life and say, okay, I don't want to carry a gun because that's automatic prison time. I don't want to go to prison, so I'll carry a knife, a box cutter, something basically to say, look, yeah, I could cut you. So from a legal perspective, all of that was against the law. So there were certain things that we had to do in terms of survival, what the law would consider to be criminal. For a young guy to basically go and buy somebody their drugs for him to make $1 or $2, that was against the law. But if you looked at it, some of us did that so that we can make it. I remember I was pretty much one of the little boys who used to always go run around and buy people their drugs or buy people their weed. And I used it to make money. I always took that money home to be like, look, yo, you know, we could use this to get something to eat. If the police caught me, they didn't really care about all that. As far as they're concerned, you got drugs in your possession, you breaking the law. So yeah, there was a lot of things that we do that was criminal related, but it wasn't necessarily criminal minded.
Okay. Did you yourself ever get involved in taking drugs?
No, I watched cocaine pretty much abuse too many people I had love for, some family members, some close friends. Cocaine is terrible. Cocaine destroys lives. Before I even started living, I knew that I wanted to live. So I never got involved in cocaine. Marijuana is a completely different drug altogether. So to a certain extent, yes, a lot of us boys off the streets, we got involved in marijuana because it was not as detrimental as cocaine. You'll have a lot of the positive musicians, them like Bob Marley per se, who were smoking weed. So a lot of us pretty much thought that, you know, we'd help with your consciousness. We thought it would be a way for you to express your creative side, and we thought it was cool because most of the cool guys did it. So pretty much weed got introduced to most ghetto children them lives, especially young males them, because of the influence that it has over, I guess you could say, the more positive people who came out of the ghetto. You know, those are the ones who you would idolize on TV, and they'll be preaching that, you know, weed isn't so bad because look at them, they're a pop star, they are a rap star, they are a reggae star because of their weed use, and it don't hinder them none.
So how easy was it to get drugs back then?
You had money, that was it. You had money. Back then, once you knew where to find drugs, that's all it took. It was always a matter of where to find it. Drug houses was pretty much in the open, but the police would never know it was a drug house because it existed in the yard where families function. So once you grew up in the streets, you would know where drug houses are. You know, so drug houses was easy to find. And pretty much coming up off of the streets, the guys in the drug industry would pretty much know you or know of you. So it would be easy for someone who come up off the street to buy drugs as opposed to somebody who was trying to play undercover, or somebody who was coming from, I don't know, maybe the rich or wealthy part of Nassau. That's the reason why a lot of us guys them got the opportunity to buy drugs and make some money, because you would have somebody come from a wealthy home, you know, or somebody studying medicine who don't want nobody to know that they fooling with drugs. They'll come in there and approach little guys off the streets and they'll be like, hey, you know, I can find some coke. And of course we'd be like, yeah, because we don't know. You got some mischievous young boys who would take their money and never go back. But that wasn't a street thing, because the guys who sold the drugs, they would always let us know that if you see me do that, we're going to be bringing down the neighborhood, the credibility or the credentials in the neighborhood. So if somebody wants drugs and they're paying us, come and get the drugs. So that's how a lot of us made our little change. We be praying that we see somebody come out of the neighborhood who wants some drugs, and they be like, hey, can you find me some drugs? Yes, I can. I'll be right back. So it was pretty much easy once you came up out of the neighborhood where drugs existed.
Okay. And a lot of this happened while you were still in high school?
A lot of this happened while I was in primary school.
What?
We haven't got even the high school era yet. This is my primary school life. This is what happened while I was pretty much, from I can remember myself coming up. From I can remember myself as a child coming up with sense, I can remember all of this. I can remember that's how Nassau was. Nassau was a place where there was drugs and there was users and there was gangs and there was violence, but also it was a peaceful time too. But unfortunately, I did not come from that environment. You know, I didn't have the opportunity until I went and I lived in Abaco. But before that, this is primary school I'm talking about. This is my primary school life where I learned how to basically be a little, I don't know, you could call it a little runner. And the term runner will come from somebody who run errands for change.
Okay, so you finished high school at 17, and then you went and you got a job, a trade.
Yeah, I got a trade, but I got a trade. I pretty much learned how to deal with computers. But let me just first put out there that what I learned in the streets, it helped my trade to a big degree, because coming from the streets, I already knew pretty much how to deal with people. I already know how to appeal to people, how to get people them to get what I want, or how to get what I want from people, and while giving them the perception that I'm looking out for their own good. So even without me learning a trade, I found that whatever I did, that it was necessarily slightly successful, because you will learn from the streets how to survive. And one of the survival skills to teach you is to teach you how to communicate to the point where you can survive properly. Or if you want to survive properly, you better learn your communication skills.
Okay. So after you started that trade, how long did you continue along that line?
Oh, I did computer work for many years. Many years. I got really good at it. Self-taught. So that was definitely a plus.
So you made money?
Oh yeah, I programmed computers. I remember the first operating system I got my hand on was Windows 94. You know, thank God Microsoft can't take me to court no more. But can I literally tell you, I made many dollars copying that operating system on other people's computer, sending them home with a brand new because from 3.1 to Windows 94, anybody who know of computer, they'll understand that was a traumatic difference. So yes, I made some money off it, and I stayed into it for about 15 years. So it made me some good money. It made me some awesome money. Yeah, it really did. That wasn't my only trade either, though.
What else did you do?
I actually, I don't know. I think that my father's a mechanic, so I grew up in a mechanic shop, a body shop. I never learned how to do mechanic work, but I always knew how to do body work to a certain extent. But it wasn't even the body work, I think, because I grew up around automobiles and vehicles. I was always blessed to have metal in my blood. So I'd always find any work I went and did pertaining to the metal industry, I would find myself being successful. And that's what caused me to necessarily pursue my, I guess you could say my career as well. You see, I went and I got a certificate in welding. So I became a certified welder because I just realized that metal was in my blood.
Okay, and throughout your period of childhood and adult and young adulthood, did you have any what was your spiritual life like? Did you have any? What was your denomination? Which church you went to? Which religion?
I attended in my, I guess you could say in my younger part of my life, I was Anglican. I went to Anglican church. I wasn't very spiritual in that time of my life because, first of all, I didn't understand half of the things the pastor was saying. But I loved Anglican religion because there's a nostalgic feeling about it. I'd always remember I loved going to church. It's just that my difficulty was understanding what the pastor was saying because it was more like it was singing. But I was Anglican at first. I lost religion for a long while in my life. I started smoking weed at the age of maybe, I don't know. Let's just say I started smoking weed late into my teens. And because of me starting to smoke weed, I lost touch with religion. And I started to seek spirituality. So
the weed did that?
The weed helped it to a certain degree. I ain't down in weed and I'm not down in anybody who smokes weed, but weed is take off most of our sense and sensibility. The part of ourselves what is reason with us to not necessarily do something. The weed sort of takes that away. Listen, I've been smoking weed for maybe 20 something years, and the first time I put weed down, and I think I was literally sitting around a crowd where I got a secondary high, and my same consciousness would told me, hey, you're doing great, you're doing awesome. That consciousness now became meek and mute to the point where it's saying, oh, don't worry about it. If you see you catch a smoke, it's no big deal. So I realized that it takes away from our reality. It dramatically takes away from our perception about reality. So yeah, weed helped me to necessarily to dismiss religion and to seek spirituality. Some could say it's a good thing, some could say it's a bad thing. All I can say is that I don't know.
Okay, well, I just wondered about your spiritual life because obviously in the Bahamas, religion plays a huge role in the lives of many people, and I just wondered what was your spiritual life like.
Well, so now,
did you go to church on a regular basis or no?
Oh yes, I one of the things, I got married at the age of 23 to Rita, right? We both expressed that we wanted our children to come up inside a church home. So both of us abandoned our original religion. I think she grew up in a Methodist church. I grew up in Anglican. So both of us was like, okay, we're going to find a new church home, something that's away from Methodist, something away from Anglican, and we both could agree. So we found a church home that we both agreed on slightly. And yes, spirituality has always been active in my life because I don't feel as if without spirituality in my life that I would have been this far. I don't like the fact that religion segregates us when spirituality brings us together. So that's why I don't necessarily at this age, now I'd always look at more spiritual, because if I feel if it's another man, a Muslim or Buddhist, if they're spiritual, we won't we'll be together. We'll always find that through love we can come. But if you see me basically was to stay stuck in the conversation of religion, we're gonna argue too much and we're not gonna sit down and we're not gonna eat properly. So that's my view on religion and spirituality. I just feel as if religion basically keeps us segregated, where it and spirituality don't do that.
Okay, there's a huge discussion now about the legalization of marijuana. What are your views on that? Having smoked since, for some time, from early childhood, early teens, until maybe you decided to stop.
That scares me. That scares me bad, because, and I just could be real with it. I was one of those smokers who couldn't get up and go to work. But nevertheless, it still adds to my personality. If I didn't catch a smoke a certain time of the day, I was very hard to approach. Sure, I was a great worker. I was a hell of a human being. But when I couldn't catch my smoke on a timely matter, I was very hard to approach. That's not my nature off weed. You can approach me anytime off weed, and I'm always going to be the down-to-earth guy that I am. So it scares me because we don't necessarily know the real dangers of marijuana. I think that medically they understand it. They want to now say it's a psychological thing. If they can take the psychological effect of weed out of the equation and they can just bring in the medicinal part, that still scares me, because if something is going to make my body feel good, it's still going to make my mind feel good. So I still feel that there's a psychological addiction. I still feel as if there's going to be a physical addiction. I don't really feel as if you can ever separate white from white. That sounds impossible. So to separate the psychological part of weed out of weed, I don't know. It scares me, because I already could foresee we're going to have half of our society is going to be sitting around, don't know what to do. Because that's what basically anybody who have a substance problem is going to be. You're going to have one half who's going to be like, I'm going to go to work after I have a drink or a smoke. Then you're going to have one half who's going to sit down there and who's going to say, I'm not going to work because I have too much to drink or smoke. It's the half of society what I fear for. And it's even the other half of society who is going to be functional with the psychological problems when they can't get their substance to help them along the way. So I urge for anybody who's on any form of substance, and particularly weed, because that was my substance of choice, I'd urge for anybody to get off of it. Make the conscious decision to pull yourself away from it and learn who you are, because weed is not, I'm sorry, all of the rappers and all of the musicians and all of the TV star who is saying otherwise, I'm saying it as a user myself or as an ex-user. You're not gonna know who you really are if you stay on substance. You got to get off the substance to find what's inside of your head, for you to find out who you really are.
So is weed really addictive?
Say what? Listen, weed's so addictive. If you don't get weed when you want weed, you ain't gonna eat. If you don't get weed when you want weed, you may not have a loving experience with your partner at home. If you don't get weed when you want weed, you may not necessarily even know how to go to sleep. So, for those who said weed isn't addictive, you tell me if, and I'm going to say this, if I know that I haven't eaten in 24 hours and I should eat, but I want to make sure I catch a good smoke before I eat, doesn't that sound addictive?
Mm-hmm. And how easy is it to quit?
Nah, I mean, that's like you saying you can stop being black. That's one of the worst thing to do is to let weed dig its claws into you, because you're not going to see a problem with it, especially if you're a functioning user. You're not going to want to quit. You're not going to want to stop, and it's not going to make you feel as if you need to quit or stop. It's just going to make you feel like you just need to catch a smoke. So you're not going to want to quit. It's one of the hardest things in the world to do. Your body can literally pass weed through it. I'm talking about the literal substance of weed within, I don't know, 5 days to maybe a week, 2 weeks. The psychological effect, oh God, it lasts for months. The cravings, you know, one of the things you go through when you stop smoking is you have vivid and lucid dreams. Weed keeps you out of the REM dream state. You will never figure that dream would be important until you see you have not dreamed properly in years. Then you stop smoking weed, and boom, 2 to 3 weeks after you stop smoking weed, you find that you can dream all the time. You catch a nap, you're dreaming. And I say vivid, lucid dreams. I'm talking about just like you're sitting down in your house and you're watching a movie. So that's one of the first big challenges most people have to go through whenever they get past the first week or 2 weeks hurdle. They're gonna have to go through the vivid, lucid dreams, and can I tell you, those are detrimental. There's nothing beautiful about it. If you were to sleep 10 times in the night, you're gonna have a lucid, vivid dream 10 times out of the night, and it's not always pleasant. Some is nightmares, some is fiction, some is works of fiction, some will be from your day-to-day life. It'd be so crazy that sometimes you will have a continuation of a dream from a week ago.
So this is because of the withdrawal of the...
Yes, the withdrawal part of weed is the real detrimental part. Once you stay on it, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna sleep. You're gonna get up. You're gonna wake. Everything is gonna be fine. The minute you come off it, that's when you're gonna really see the real addiction to it. Because at first, you're going to go through a state of uneasiness and unrestness. That right there is crazy. I mean, and you're literally sitting down, but you can't find any peace in nothing what you're doing, because your mind is going to be craving it, your body is going to be screaming for it. You're going to then find that you're going to try to substitute it with something else. Maybe it might be eating, maybe it might be physical activities, who knows. But you're going to also find that that's going to lead you down to a part where you're not satisfied yet again, because it's saying to you, do this to fill in the gap, but it's not working. So you're going to definitely find yourself craving weed. Let's just say, for those who you see do say, okay, I'm fighting through it, and they'd get through the first week. The second weeks get rougher, because now your body is saying, okay, we're fine with it, but now your mind is definitely saying, oh no, you're not fine with it. You need, just go catch a little smoke. And that's when the problem really starts. I think the problem smart for most weed smokers would start from week 2 straight into the week, I don't know, 8. That's when the real problems start. The longer you stay away from it for the first 2 months, the more the symptoms get mentally.
So how much is it an expensive habit to have, or not really?
It depends on I feel as if anything that's not adding into your life is taking away. So aside from the I feel good for a while, weed is, people think it's a manageable habit, because I don't know, for a half bag is $5. That's if you go and you get a half bag. If you go and you get it by the bulk to last you for certain days, it's a little more. But let's just say you go half bag, that's $5. You buy a leaf to go with it, something to wrap your weed in, maybe $2. So I budgeted at $7 a day. Now, at $7 a day, that may sound like nothing, but can I tell you, I have a lot of friends who tell me they don't even buy lunch at $7 a day. I have some friends with some family, more kids than they should have, or more kids than they wanted to have, and they'll tell me they only could pretty much afford a $5 lunch a day. So for me to say I'll find $7 a day to support my habit, that was pretty manageable, but it wasn't until I quit that I realized how much I was wasting. Because after I would put down $7 a day for 7 days a week, I would realize at the end of the week to say, hey, this is some good little change. So if you do that times 1 month, then you do that times 6 months, you're gonna realize, say, all this money I was wasting on weed, on this little dried up brown substance. So while you're on it, you're going to feel as if the habit is very manageable. When you get off it, you're going to really see just how much you're wasting on it.
Okay. So Your advice to someone who thinks it should be legalized would be?
Don't do it.
Okay.
Don't do it. My advice would be, if it is so good for cancer, just treat it for cancer. If it is so good for glaucoma, just treat it for glaucoma. Leave it illegal. Leave it off of the streets. Leave it out of the pharmaceutical hands, because once you see it becomes legal and the pharmacists think that they're going to govern it, they're going to sell the wasted byproducts to the street guys there. They're going to find some way to process with the waste of weed is what you see people smoke, the dried up part of it. And I know, for all the Rastafarians who say burn fire on him, that's the truth. We smoke the wasted part of it. We wait till the leaves dried up, till the buds dried up. Then when they slightly dried up, we put them in a leaf and we smoke that. If it was so great, why are we not smoking the fresh leaf? Because it won't burn? So we're smoking the wasted part of it. If we're waiting till it's dried up. So the pharmaceutical companies, after they're going to go ahead and they're going to take what they consider to be the medicinal part of it, they're going to still take the wasted byproduct because it has value on the streets, and it's still going to trickle it down to the streets yet again. This is how cocaine got about in the streets. Cocaine was legally a part of a drug, and what happened was the wasted byproduct, and it trickled down to the streets, and people started mixing it up with their baking powder and their water, and they start putting it into little crack rocks. So people start hitting it now. That's how cocaine got on the street. So
Well, if you're talking about that, it's like dried up. It's like old grape juice. That's how we get wine and alcoholic beverages. It's like the waste.
Wasted byproduct.
It's always the part that is addictive and that is no good for us.
Exactly.
And that can lead us down the wrong path.
And that's why I feel as if we should never legalize it. If you want to turn a blind eye to it, then you do that within the courtrooms. If you want to necessarily say, hey, weed isn't so bad, you don't let the guys off the streets know that. Because now how many young guys are you going to be telling who coming up off of the streets, who feel as if I sell drugs, the law could pick me up. But when you say you're going to make it legal, a lot of these guys, them who have no ambition to begin with. We're not talking about ambitious kids of the ghetto. We're talking about the unambitious one. And let's don't act like we don't have it. We have this on both sides of life. Rich, poor, the ghetto, the suburbs, everywhere they exist. So when you talk about the unambitious kids there, they're going to say, look here, they're going to sell weed because it's legal on the side of the road. And that's right there's where the problem is going to start, because we don't want that society. So if we're going to necessarily use it for medicinal purposes, for cooking purposes, let's go ahead and let's make it legal for that, to that extent. But you should never expect to see somebody with a bunch of dried up grass in their hands to say, I'm going to go bake a cake. Well, no, we have a whole oil for that. Or we have something you can buy at the store for that. So if you see someone dried up grass in their hand, then you should understand and say, well, I know that dried up grass is for. So we should still keep a lid on it, because you're not going to find oxycodone or tramadol in the streets. There's a reason why those drugs are considered narcotics. They're used every day from a medical perspective to alleviate severe pain. But they're not on the streets because there's a narcotic value to it. So why can't we leave the wasted byproduct of weed and narcotic value for what it really is? And why can't we say, okay, the same way a doctor can say, I'm going to prescribe some drugs to you that's going to make you feel good, but you can't buy it off the streets. Why can't I go and I can't say, well, I want to eat something but have some marijuana in it? But so why do I have to go and buy it off the streets? So I feel as if legalizing it is not a good thing. And this is not from somebody who's against weed. This is from somebody who smoked weed for 23 years of their life. Both of my kids know of weed. I never gave it to them to smoke, but they literally watched me smoke all of their life. And they can tell you, say, Papa went and Papa did what he had to do. He gone out there, he worked, whatever he had to do. But at the same time, this is me telling somebody who is thinking about it, it's not worth it. It's not worth trapping your mind inside a little tiny little box. And don't tell me weed is going to tell you to think out of the box. Because I'm going to tell somebody right now, if you think you're thinking out of the box on weed, wait until you get off of weed.
So I mean, either you'll have to smoke it for the rest of your life.
Well, nobody has to do anything for the rest of their life when it comes to stuff. See, the beautiful thing about substance is that I don't need to go to the bar and take that drink. I don't need to go down and I don't need to smoke a joint. I don't need to take a hit of coke. I do these things for whatever escape I want. It could be escape from a beautiful life. I could just be like, hey, you know what? I got too much money, and I just want basically just go in a quiet place. It could be where I'm escaping a hard life. Life is too terrible, and I want to escape the reality of the world. This is what we use substance for. We use substance as a means of escape. You know, we say we mask it with beautiful words like celebration or good time, but that's what we use it for. Because if I go to a party and I say I want to have a good time, why do I need to have a drink to have a good time? Why can't I just engage in a good time? I can just basically go and have a good time. So there's nothing in any form of substance. There's no alcohol, no drugs, no nothing we can use in any substance that we're gonna have to use all of our life. Everything we need is created in the body. And if you have a deficiency, most likely you should correct that part of the body that's creating the deficiency, and you'll be fine. So for say, somebody to say, I need to smoke because it keeps me calm all of my life, and it can keep me calm for the rest of my life. That's already the illusion the drugs have on you. And if you see you want to live with that illusion, that means that you already fall short of your own self, because your own self will tell you you don't need nothing maybe besides the counsel of your Heavenly Father. And the same thing, you got some religions who don't even believe in that, who still is living to see your old age. So there's no substance that people need to embark and engage in. They just choose to embark and engage in it because it releases them from whatever form of reality that they want to be released from.
Right. Okay. Your career took you from IT or technology to where you also dealt with the being a welder. Is there anything else that you did in order to make money and take care of your family?
It was always, everything I did was always in line with that. I program computers. I program satellites. I program many things. And in terms of metal work, I did steel work. I tied steel. I worked at a junkyard. I worked at a metal yard. I learned to spray metal because growing up in the body shop, I already had an understanding of prepping metal to the point of being sprayed. Then growing up in the welding store, I learned to clean up my welding. So I always find that all the work that I did always tied into either the steel work or the tech work. That's where I made most of my money. Yeah, I pretty much always stayed in those two fields coming up in my time. There'll be a point in time in your life where I think during COVID time, because things was pretty rough, I was in construction. I think there was a part of time during COVID time, and the only thing where I could have get done was there was a house being built through the corner. The government of the country locked down. So the guy was like, hey, you can come work down by the house where we're building. So I took some of my, I wouldn't say building skill, but some of my construction skills with me down there, and I helped build a house or two here or there. But all of my work and all of my income has always been inside the steel or the metal field or the electronic field.
And you have two grown children?
Yes, I have a son that's 21 now, Donovan Wright, daughter, Danessa Wright, who's now 18 years of age. Yes. Okay,
well, having grown up in Nassau, on this beautiful island of Nassau, through the 70s and 80s, and up until now, what advice would you give to anybody coming up, or adults, older persons at this point? What would be your words of advice?
My best words of advice would be, stay away from your substance. It's not helping. It's not helping any situation. It's not helping you to cope. It's not helping you to get past the day. It's not helping. In fact, you're not realizing what it's actually taking away. You're gonna have a kid. You're gonna have a family member. You're gonna have a sibling. You're gonna have somebody who's basically sitting down, and their heart is bleeding because they're watching you use some form of substance. So my advice is, it doesn't matter if you're educated, if you're not, if you're wealthy, if you're poor. None of those things matter. We can change every situation and every circumstances we're in. But the minute we allow a substance to dictate us, that's when we fail and that's when we lose. So my advice to anybody who came up in the 70s and 80s, 90s and up to now, it was always the same thing. Be careful of substance abuse. Be careful of any substance that you know can lead to abuse. And I'm saying this today, it's either fall inside drugs, marijuana, or alcohol. I think marijuana would be one of the worst, because marijuana makes you feel as if it's an okay drug to take. It makes you feel as if once I'm smoking weed, even doctors still make you feel as if smoking marijuana is the best thing to do compared to smoking tobacco or compared to drinking. So stay away from substance, and it's only every substance is the gateway. Every substance is a gateway, and it's not a gateway into other drugs. It's a gateway to lose yourself.